Hello and welcome. Navigating the world of love and emotions with your partner may leave you feeling as though you're lost in space. And that could be because men and women are from radically different planets. At least that's what international author Dr. John Gray argued in his huge bestseller, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So what happens when Mars and Venus collide? And once they do, how do you keep your relationship from spontaneously combusting? On this Valentine's Day show, we talk about how to avoid interplanetary warfare in your relationship here on Earth. And don't forget, we take your calls on the show. You can reach us at the numbers at the bottom of your screen. And joining me now from San Francisco is the best-selling relationship author of all time, Dr. John Gray. In his latest book, Why Mars and Venus Collide, Dr. Gray outlines how you can communicate effectively through conflict and revive a stressed-out relationship here on Earth. Dr. Gray, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much. A real pleasure.
Pleasure to talk with you again. So now I have to ask you, your new book looks at how the different sexes handle stress and how that affects relationships. And from my own background in medical physiology, I was fascinated to see how you focus on hormone levels such as oxytocin, estrogen, testosterone. And I'm going to quote your book on this just to start out with, looking at women and stress. And in this quote on women and stress, you say, the real reason women are tired today is not because they have too much to do, it's because they are not producing enough oxytocin to cope with stress. Now, I can see why many women might find that particularly controversial, but I'd like you to explain that for our viewers, please.
Well, when you have elevated cortisol levels, and women today have twice the cortisol levels that their mothers had and that men have. Literally, women are going through an emergency crisis. Cortisol levels go up because their oxytocin levels, this is the hormone, oxytocin gets produced when a woman is relaxed, when she's not hurried, when there's no emergencies, when there's routine, and when it's nurturing and in a cooperative environment. The more women have that, the more oxytocin gets produced. That lowers their stress levels. When stress levels rise, literally women have half the energy. The body cannot make as much energy when stress levels are up. She will have quick energy. She will crave carbohydrates, things like sugar and cakes and candy and sweets. And that will give her short-term energy, and then it will crash down further. And then she'll want carbohydrates again, and it'll crash down. But she doesn't experience this sustaining power that like my mother had and women of previous generations had when women were in a community of other women and they were supported throughout the day. The more women become like men, they're now in a testosterone world. Testosterone doesn't help women very much at all. As a matter of fact, it can cause more stress for women. But for men, when there's emergencies, urgencies, deadlines, goals that have to be achieved, those have-to sacrifices you make to get the thing done, that stimulates a hormone called testosterone, which lowers stress for men, but it doesn't lower stress for women. So at the end of the day, a woman's stress levels are twice as much as a man's, and that's outrageous.
Now, I mean, you were explaining what makes oxytocin levels go down as well. How is it generated under normal circumstances, and how can a woman make sure she's generating the right amounts to be able to cope with what's thrown at her?
Well, first of all, normal circumstances today don't stimulate oxytocin for women. But if we go back 50 years or go back 100 years, we'll see that the daily routine that women went through is actually a routine that will stimulate oxytocin. Universities do these very sophisticated psychological happiness tests. It used to be that women were much happier than men, and now women are not. They're actually more unhappy than men, and physiologically we can measure their hormones. They're under more stress than men. It used to be that women outlived men by 7 years. That statistic has now changed, and it's about equal, and it's descending. So women are actually having more sickness and disease. For example, osteoporosis. 90% of the people who have osteoporosis are women. Now more women with heart disease and certainly cancer. So women are under a huge crisis that we're starting to see now, even when it comes to weight loss. So much weight gain that our society is experiencing, both men and women. But when a man goes on a program, a good diet and some exercise, he will tend to be 50% more effective than a woman. He can lose weight faster than a woman. And why again? Because when a woman doesn't have enough oxytocin in her day to stimulate oxytocin, then her stress levels go up, and it prevents her from burning fat for energy, and instead she has to burn carbohydrates, which give quick energy but not long-lasting energy.
Now, in your book, you also mention about the importance of testosterone. You touched on it briefly earlier, for men to have healthy relationships with women as well. Of course, people tend to think of testosterone purely as a hormone of aggression.
Well, you see, that's not a hormone of aggression. It's completely misunderstood. Testosterone allows you to have energy to solve problems. And sometimes aggression is a way of solving problems. But even aggression itself is never just normal testosterone. It's also low serotonin. There's a brain chemical, and there's a neurotransmitter in the brain that gives us confidence and assuredness that things are going to turn out good. When men don't have confidence that things are going to turn out well, then they become aggressive. So testosterone it's the romantic hormone. It makes men behave better. It brings out the best in men. It's when testosterone levels go low, that's when men get grumpy, they become irritable, they sulk, they're not interested in a relationship, they're often irresponsible. That's the problem for men. Any man who's depressed, for example, has low testosterone. Any woman who's depressed has low oxytocin levels. That's the cause of depression in women.
Right. You quote in your book, and this is going to be a shock for many women, on the issue of men and love. A quote from your book says, "A man does not spend his life looking for someone to love him. Instead, he looks for someone he can be successful in loving." It seems quite a big difference, and I wonder if that's true. What does a woman need to do to win over a man, if that's what she's wanting to do?
What she needs to do to win him over and also to continue passion and have a great relationship is work together with the man on how to help him feel and be successful in making her happy. See, women are often come to me as the therapist and complain, "I do so much for him and he doesn't do for me." And I say, well, don't stop doing things for him if that makes you unhappy. Instead, do things to make you happy and help get him to support you. But how do you get a man to do things for you? You have to ask. And women think, oh, I don't have to ask. I shouldn't have to ask. In all the romantic novels, you don't have to ask. In all the magazines that women read, you don't have to ask. But those are all written by women. It's a woman's fantasy, this whole romantic thing. Now, romance is real. But if you want continued romance from a man, you have to ask. And that to women, they don't know this. There's so many things women don't know how to do. Like for my wife, she feels it's very romantic that I go with her to the farmer's market on Sunday. We go shopping together for our food. We meet our farmers and so forth. She loves that. That's very romantic for her and enjoyable. If she said to me on Sunday morning, and she said, "John, do you want to come to the farmer's market or do you want to go to sleep?" I'd say, "I'll sleep." But if she doesn't say, "What do you want to do?" Instead, she says, "Oh, I want to go to the farmer's market. Will you take me?" I'll get up and take her. Just like an old horse, you give him a little kick and he's happy to go, but you got to give him a carrot as well.
I've got to ask you an email that came in from Kristen in Texas here in the US, and Kristen asks, what methods, scientific or otherwise, do you use in order to develop your theories about male-female interaction?
Well, that's the most wonderful thing about this new book, Why Mars-Venus Collide. It's all based on the physiology of men and women, our hormonal differences and our brain differences. And in the back of the book, I've just got all these references to huge amounts of research that's been done over the last 18 years since I wrote the groundbreaking book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And at that time, everybody says, well, sounds true. It's my experience, but how do you know? Where's the research? And I said, look, I'm just a marriage counselor for 20 years at that time, and I see this is the case, and I see how to solve people's problems every day, and it works. That's all I had to go on. But now, 18 years later, every university has done a massive amount of research on brain scans and hormone differences, wiring differences, biological differences that verify all my theories and provide a foundation for even better ideas. So my new book is really new and improved. It's got all these new suggestions that make relationships even easier. And most important, suddenly we can make sense of things instead of going, I don't know how to make her happy, or why isn't he this way?
Right, this is now, you're going to obviously have the skeptics, and this email that came in from Paula Varley in Norwich in the UK says, isn't it more productive to treat relationships as partnerships where differences complement? We are not helpless puppets driven by our genetic hardwiring. Free will enters into it too. Harking back to ancestral roles and pleading helplessness is as unconvincing as it is pathetic. So she's not convinced by the going back to ancient roles.
She's just caught in her defensive reaction. If you look at our hormones, they haven't changed in all those years, but I'm right in harmony with her. I'm totally about men and women complementing each other. I'm just explaining a hard reality, which is why women today are experiencing twice the stress that men experience. It's hormonal. Men come home, they can sit on the couch, rebuild testosterone levels by watching TV, and their stress levels go down. I don't care how much willpower a woman has, she can't sit on that couch and have her stress levels go down. And women need to talk. One of the things about women, they're wired up differently. In the brain, under moderate stress, their amygdala, the stress center, is half the size of a man's, and the wiring goes to the emotional part of the brain. Doesn't matter what your programming is, your willpower, your childhood, or anything, under stress, women experience 8 times more blood flow to the emotional part of the brain. Then it's wired up to the talking part of the brain. So women are really designed to talk about the things that bother them, and their stress levels go down. Men are not. Men are designed under stress, the wiring goes to the action part of the brain. Men want to fix it and solve it. Now, if you don't know that, and you're limited to just some philosophical thought that we should all be the same, that would be really nice, we'd all understand each other, then a woman would talk about her problems and be upset. Why does he keep trying to fix things? Or why does he get tired of listening to me? Why doesn't he listen to me? Because he's designed to fix things. But if you tell him, all right, honey, you don't have to talk, you don't have to say anything, just listen and I'll be happy, then a man can do that. We're perfectly designed to do that. Men love watching the news because we don't have to say anything or do anything about it. Now, if a woman says that to a man, then we're perfect complements. So I'm all about learning how today we can learn new strategies, not old things. I'm not saying turn back the clock. She thinks I'm saying go back to the old ways of thinking. We have to learn new ways to help women lower their stress levels by increasing oxytocin levels through improving communication. Right. I've studied all the indigenous tribes of the world. Women don't care about talking to men. They don't complain there's no romance. Women had their world, men had their world, and today we can come together more, but if we are, there's going to be a collision, which now we see as the case, rather than coming together in harmony, if we understand how we fit together.
Well, Dr. Gray, we've got a caller from Paris. Anwar is on the line. Anwar, what would you like to ask?
Hi, Riz. Hi, Dr. Gray. Yes, I would like to ask Dr. Gray that he's telling about men are from Mars and women are from Venus, that kind of theory. But I'd like to ask Dr. Gray, did he ever meet anyone that this formula doesn't work? It seems to him that this person is not from Mars or not from Venus, maybe from Pluto, something like that.
Okay, okay.
First of all, a lot of women have read my book, Men Are From Mars, and they read it and they say, gee, I feel as though I'm from Mars. I feel more like a man. That's why I wrote this new book, because women can be cultured and taught by experiences to behave like a man, because that's the only way they get respect. So women can learn to become like men. The problem is when they become like men and they don't take the time to nurture the softer side, the more vulnerable side. We call in my book the oxytocin side, because that's a hormone that women need. Every woman needs it. There's no exception. Every woman has to have oxytocin, and if she doesn't have it, then she's going to be more unhappy than if she did have it. So these are some hard, basic scientific realities. And you've got somebody, if you've got male genitals, you need testosterone. And if you've got female genitals, you need oxytocin. And we can learn a lot of different ways to solve the problem. But there are these differences. And then, of course, there are some exceptions even to that. So there is room for complete exceptions where you can be both.
Well, Dr. Gray, in the few minutes we've got, I want to try and get to a couple more of the emails we had from viewers, because we try and get our viewer questions in on the show. And Kathleen in Indiana wrote in by email saying, I used one of your techniques, asking my partner for what I needed directly, straight out. He agreed that it was fair and that I was not asking too much, yet the consideration I asked for never materialized. What now?
He forgot to do it. You ask again, as if the first time. Simple. Women think, if I have to ask again, why do I have to ask again? Because he's not used to thinking that way. So you just ask again, you ask again. And most women, if you ask a few times, then you get upset with him for forgetting. And then he's never going to do it because you get upset with him. Instead, it's an art to it. You don't have to do this forever. But in the beginning, you start learning how to ask in a nice, friendly tone of voice. Hey, would you do this? And if he forgets, oh, by the way, would you do this? And if he forgets, oh, by the way, would you do this? Then he remembers. Oh my gosh, she's been asking me. I got to get that done. Men forget things. Women forget things. Women forget all the time how wonderful their husbands are. Women actually experience temporary amnesia, and they forget any good thing a man has done. It's just women forget things on an emotional level. Men forget things on an action level. But it happens to both of us.
You mentioned about studying other cultures, and I want to squeeze in this question because I know you've traveled widely too, that came in from France, from Paris. And Bruno Druski wrote in saying, do you think that the differences between men and women are an absolute, or are they dependent on culture? For example, do successful Western women have anything in common with an Iraqi mother or a single woman in China?
Well, what they all have in common is the same physiology. The physiology, the hard wiring in the body is designed to make babies. Their brains are designed to notice more problems, to talk more, to nurture more. Their reward systems inside are when they have nurturing. But let's say in one culture, women are doing nurturing things all day long. That's the culture, teaches them to do nurturing things. Then a woman's not going to feel the great need that a Western woman feels who's not doing nurturing things all day. She's out in the jungle fighting a battle. She has different needs to restore balance to her body. So the Western woman who's like battling all the time, put an extreme there, she needs more romance. She needs more communication. She needs more intimacy. She has a different need to raise the oxytocin levels. The woman who's in a community of women supporting each other all day long, doing nurturing activities, talking and sharing and helping, in that environment, they're getting plenty of oxytocin. So when the man comes home, she's not like suddenly going, we need to talk, or why don't we have romance, or you never share with me. The whole complaints are all different. But the physiology is still the same. Right. It just depends upon what the culture has you doing every day.
Well, Dr. Gray, lots more questions, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. I thank you very much for joining us and hope to speak with you again soon.
Oh, it's a real pleasure.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for being with us on that special Valentine's advice show. We have another week of interactive ones coming next week, including a look at the upcoming Pakistan elections. Don't forget, if you have any thoughts about what's going on there or about other pressing issues around the world, send your emails to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is next.